Hi, I'm Mavis Harris, the founder and media director of Nice Marmot PR. I'm here today to tell you all about music publicity, why it's important, what it can do for a career, things you need to, be aware of in terms of how to begin a publicity campaign, and all the things surrounding it. So music PR is basically making sure that you as an artist or a creative person in general garners media attention. And that means media attention across the board. So television, online, podcasting, print, streaming. So you want to have an effect in those mediums. You want to be visual in those mediums. And that in turn will lead to more exposure, gaining a bigger fan base and making sure you really make a name for yourself and build your career. So you need those initial foundations of press so that you can get your music out there to the masses. When you start to build the foundations of press as an artist, that leads to bigger and brighter things for you in your future. Not only does it gain you more fans, expand your musical awareness across the country and internationally. Once you start being seen and heard on a variety of mediums, that leads to things like potential brand partnerships, and more importantly, potentially a label signing, an agent, a manager, bigger PR companies, tours. So some people will see you in a newspaper, some people will hear you on the radio and be like, you know what, that will work for my company or my artist, so let's get them on a tour. Let's add them to this folk festival. Let's include this song on a TV show. So you want that feeling of almost like an organic feeling for PR. You want people to discover you naturally, even though there's been a big push to make sure that you're getting seen and heard in the right places. I'm going to break down different media for you. And we can talk about how to access it and how to use it. And I'm going to start with radio first. So there is a lot of ways to access and use radio. I'm going to kind of gloss over commercial radio, and commercial are the big stations like Virgin or KISS. And they're the ones that CanCon really does come into play. So, that 30% being for Canadian artists, but they tend to use that 30% towards Bieber or Avril Lavigne. So the best way, especially as a starting artist and an emerging artist, is to really harness the non-com stations. So that non-commercial means things like CBC, campus radio, community radio, even some internet radio stations, Sirius XM. But I'm going to focus, just for ease, on CBC. It's important, obviously, for a number of reasons. One is that it's financially great. You get paid. So you get spun, you get some revenue, which, starting as a musician, that's the goal, to make your living off of your music. And two, just for exposure. Key people listen to CBC, and that goes across the board. They could be social folks, they could be agents, managers, they could just be someone like Strombo himself. And I'm going to break down how to get on CBC, because for some people it could seem really daunting. It's a huge organization with, programs across the country on their national, like CBC1, but then CBC2, then there's CBC3, then you have regional little shows. So first and foremost, it's getting your music into the CBC. They have something called the VML, which is their library. And that is where every producer across the country and every programmer across the country and every host can grab any song they want, as long as it's in there. If you go online and just enter in, you can just even Google CBC Music Library. There's a list of instructions on how to get your music in there. They're going to want specific things, and it's just, you get to just send an email. It's not like you have to fill out a form. Where they'll want your WAV files of the songs, your MP3 files. Don't ask me why, they want both. Any song art, if you have like a single art, like a album art, anything like that as well. And then also all your production credits and liner notes, so that everyone gets paid fairly. So if there's any co-writes on the song, any extra musicians that they should be aware of, and then proof that it is kind of CanCon, because they'll need to know that a little bit as well. So where it was recorded, who mixed, mastered it, all that jazz. So once you've compiled that information, email them. Wait like a week afterwards. I like to think in my head there's a little person taking in all this information, just sitting there silently, because it can take a while to actually enter the library. So I'm like, is there one guy doing this? But wait a week so you know that it's in the library, and then you can start reaching out to programmers and producers. This is also where CBC is super great, because they provide a lot of this information online of specific contacts, not only the programmers. So you have someone like Mark MacArthur, who is pretty much the guy that programs CBC music. Same with James Booth, who is based in Vancouver. And they oversee all incoming things. But then you can also like start to narrow that down and be like, okay, well, Margaret Gallagher for here, you know what I mean? For Vancouver, Helen Bagshaw for Toronto, for Fresh Air, Errol Nazareth. So one thing I should say too, they're getting inundated, right? They're getting a kabillion emails. So keep it short and sweet. Just be like, hi, I'm so-and-so. This music is in the library, and always anchor it to something as well. So this music's in the library, an album's coming out, that's an anchor enough. Or I'm gonna be in town playing at such and such a venue, and it's in the library, grab it. It'd be great if you spun it. They'll appreciate that short note. They have something to talk about. Once they go into the library, they can access more information if need be, and just keep on them like that. And you don't need to email them 5 times a week. That's stalking. Keep it down to maybe once a week. They'll need some nudging. As I say, they're getting, and I'm not exaggerating here, they're getting thousands of emails, if not a day. So just have to nudge them once a week and say, hey, this is what's happening. It'd be great if you spun me. And more than likely you will. And it could just be a feature. So a feature spin is just they'll play it once. But that's wonderful enough. Then you can just you're in the system. You've got a foot in the door. And then who knows why? Sometimes it's magic, but sometimes they'll be like, this is really great. And you'll start to see stuff really bubble up on Radio 2, hopefully get in the top 20 there. But rest assured, it is difficult getting into non-com radio. But if you just have patience and the time, and do your research well, so don't send something to, someone who won't program anything. So you send it to Saturday Night Jazz, but you're fully punk. You know what I mean? Some people do that. They want to I want to hit up everybody. Do your research a bit and make sure you have the right people. And as I said, with CBC specifically, that's all available for you online. And it's not daunting. It might seem daunting, but it's all there, all their contacts and all their information. So go for it, because you'll have a really good shot. Next, I'm going to talk about streaming. Unfortunately, in today's age, a lot of stuff is a numbers game, as I call it. People want to see numbers consistently going up with streams, which bleeds into even YouTube. Numbers, up, up, up. And for a lot of artists, it's really important that they get on editorial playlists. So an editorial playlist, and I'm just going to stick with Spotify, but obviously this kind of goes for all those folks with Apple and Tidal and the like. Editorial playlists are Spotify curated. So anything that the actual streaming service decides is worthy of a specific playlist, that's editorial. So, New Music Friday or Fresh Finds or It's a Bop. I know as an emerging artist, that's a goal, because a lot of people do listen to those playlists. And that's really, really hard to get on. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. That is ridiculously hard to get on, especially as an emerging artist. Keep this in mind. Spotify gets 60,000 song submissions a week. So don't be sad if you didn't make New Music Friday. Neither did 59,000 other artists. But there is somewhat of a way to massage your way into those key editorial playlists that you want to be on. So for us, on the publicity end of things, it's accessing third-party playlisters. And that means just people that aren't specifically affiliated with Spotify or other streaming services, but people that, for some reason or another, have great taste in music and have a lot of followers. So you might have a third-party playlister with, 650,000 listeners. Those folks are way more open to discovering new music. And a lot of the times, third-party playlisters have bigger numbers than editorial. And so attack those folks. I think especially if you're just beginning off the bat, obviously when you go through in your Spotify for artists, click those editorial playlists, but then do a big focus on playlists that are not specifically affiliated with Spotify, because Spotify has FOMO. So if you get added to 16, 17 third-party playlists with significant numbers, and even exclaims A-list, which doesn't have the biggest numbers, but people do look at on a weekly basis, Spotify will notice. They're a weird big brother. They'll see, wait a second, this artist has been picked up here, 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 and here. They get those analytics. And so then they'll start to be like, are we missing something here? Are we not on the cool train? Oh God. So then by the time your second single comes out, they'll remember that. It's bizarre how much they know, like it really is. And they'll remember that this act or this artist got picked up so much here and got streams from those folks that more than likely they will add you for your second or third single. So don't throw all your eggs in the basket for editorial, and don't be let down if you're not in editorial, because there's different ways to go about it. A great campaign that I once did was with Sunreal. And he really wanted to get on editorial playlists. So he just started tagging Spotify and everything. It's like, it's me walking my dog, Spotify kid, right? Everything. And they noticed. And they ended up adding him. And so they'll pay attention to that too. So if you get some great hits with other playlists or even another medium altogether, no harm, no foul in tagging Spotify. Their team will see that. I'm going to talk about online media. So you could say blogs, kind of forums, chat groups, all of that stuff. Anything that lives online in that way. Really important, but at the same time, harder to access in the sense of getting into those things. So for example, a blog like The Line of Best Fit, their lead times have changed drastically. They're still a powerhouse in the blog community, but things that would usually take something just to put online 2 or 3 days is taking them 2 or 3 months because they are overloaded. I had a meeting with the editor-in-chief, and they get a lot of emails. The longest he goes without an email is 30 seconds, and he had a backlog of 13,000 emails to get through, so no joke. So this is when you're gonna have to give yourself a lot of time, and also recognize that Canada is not strong when it comes to online content. And I mean that in the sense of there is not a standalone. So if you look at exclaim.ca, which is fabulous, there is the print element, like the brother and sister. There isn't like a Pigeons and Planes, a Stereogum, which is just online with no print element, and that just stands as a giant. And those giants are in the UK and America. So I highly, highly, highly recommend hitting up The World. And that could even just be just Googling. I'm a big fan of the Googs. Just Goog best blogs to submit to right now. And submit. And also know that it's going to take time, and give yourself that time. Give yourself 6, 7 months if need be. You might have been sitting with this music for a while, but it's going to be new to everybody else, so that you can give these outlets the time to really dig in and kind of get through their own mess of emails and get to you eventually. And as I said, that can be a once a week email, but you got to do it. And I think a lot of people poo-poo smaller blogs, blogs that don't have the big names. Like, people will come out and be like, what? I want to be on this. Well, dude, so does everybody. You got to respect the smaller blogs, because the smaller blogs will eventually become the bigger blogs. And it also feeds the algorithm. You want every blog out there. You want them to cover everything. You want the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly. You want the reviews, you want the features, but you want the lazy blogs that just go, here's a link. You want that. It feeds into the algorithm. It keeps your name out there, keeps things going. You want it all. So I think when it comes to online, you need to really do some research there and look at different territories, because there's different territories that love Canadian music regardless of genre. Like, so Italy, Japan, Australia's huge, especially if you're kind of folky. That one is kind of genre specific. Do your research, hit them all up. The industry is constantly changing, and you as an artist know this. It's always in flux. Things are different. Ways to approach things are different almost every 6 months. The one constant, Canada does not fully support until there is support from another territory. When I was at Maple Music back in the day, it was the Deers. No one cared. Then they exploded in the UK. Then Canada was like, they're ours though. Montreal's the best, right? So, and my Universal days, it was Shawn Mendes, same thing. Canada was like, and then he went to LA. And then that changed the game. So I'll highly recommend hitting up those international folks. Obviously, as I said earlier, the UK and America are the best places for blogs, but there's some amazing stuff worldwide. And especially if you're in a certain genre like punk or hip hop or country, there are places out there that would love to hear your music and are super excited and are still super excited about anything Canadian. We still have that vibe worldwide. It might not feel like it here at home, but we still have that like, ooh, it's Canadian outside of the country. So if you go for those, you'll start to see the Canadian online perk up once they start seeing that you're getting attention, even from the smaller kind of C-list blogs. Canada will get excited. So now I'm going to talk about traditional media. And when I say traditional, I mean television and print. And print kind of covers a certain amount. So, obviously newspapers, but magazines, alternative weeklies and monthlies, stuff like that. Even just zines. They don't do anything anymore. They're still super important for 2 reasons. One is for perception, and that's what a lot of PR is. So if you got the cover of Rolling Stone, that's a huge deal. It looks great. Hang that shit on your wall for memorabilia. It sends a message to people that you are the thing. You'll notice maybe like 8 more Instagram followers. Honestly, I had a colleague get a 4-page spread in Rolling Stone for an artist, and they saw 17 new Spotify listeners and 38 new Instagram followers. So it doesn't do anything. The second thing is grants, especially as an emerging artist. For some reason, grants really want to see print. And it doesn't have to be pie in the sky like Rolling Stone, like I've talked about. It can be Georgia Strait. It could be a mention in the Vancouver Sun. It could be a little thing in the Toronto Star. As long as you get something in print, that really helps towards getting more government grants. So if you are in that hellscape of grant writing, just really go and get familiar with your local papers and your dailies, as I said, your street weeklies, and sometimes your glossy magazines, but I'll get into that later. So know who you need to reach out to. Same thing, just look at their masthead. Their mastheads are usually online, or if you're physically sitting, let's say with the Georgia Strait, you can see it's Mike Usinger is the music guy. So it's important, but it won't move your career forward in the sense of gaining more followers in the numbers game thing, but it will move it forward with perception and with government money, hopefully. Podcasting, I like it for 2 things. One, it's a fully formed living conversation. So you as an artist, you're a creative and you want to talk about your process. And let's say you get a feature interview with Exclaim. They're still going to talk to you for about 20 minutes. That's great. But with podcasts, you can really get into your craft and talk to someone with a fully formed living conversation and talk to them for an hour and really dig in. And I find it helps artists feel more comfortable with talking to media because it feels, as I said, like you're just sitting and having a conversation with a friend over coffee. And there's a lot of podcasts out there. The bigger ones are harder to get. You'll get there though. But there's some really great local ones. And I always say to artists, if there's something else that drives you, let's say you're really politically active or you're a whiskey aficionado like myself, tap into those podcasts as well. So if it's something that you can talk about for longer than 30 minutes and you really, really, truly love, and it doesn't have to be music, go there. Because they'll still talk about your music. They'll still want to know about you as a person. And it furthers your fan base, furthers exposure, and it helps you, as I said, learn kind of the cadence of just your own voice when you're talking to the media. And it also gets people to know you as you. So let's say there is already a fan and they know you strictly from your music. It's kind of like, oh, hey, but we also have this in common. We love whiskey. We love our dogs. We love travel. And there's so many things, and there's so many podcasts out there. So I utilize that because even if you just gain 1 or 2 more fans, it is worth it. And it also then feeds back into the online stuff. It'll be posted online as well. And it helps keep that algorithm going. So anything you love, obviously your music's important. And as I said, they'll still talk about your music. If it's even a non-music or entertainment podcast, just go for it. Do your research. You'll find them. All right, now let's talk about how to schedule a PR campaign. So you've done the research, you've looked at radio that you want to contact, you've got your music in the library, you know what online outlets you want to hit up, you've liaised with your local regional print papers, all that jazz. Now you're like, timing. This is really important because when I started, which was 22 years ago in PR, timing didn't really matter. Everything was about 3 to 6 weeks. Now it's all over the map. So you need to learn that. So before I get into timelines, I'm going to tell you about times of year that suck to release music. First is March. Avoid March like the plague. You have the Junos. You have South by Southwest. You have Treefort. And there's also, I'm forgetting them now, there's a myriad of things happening in March. This means the media is away. They're focusing all their attention on something else. They're probably drunk. They're not going to look at your emails because they are in festival party mode for pretty much the entire month. The second time of year to avoid is Christmas. Unless you are Celine Dion or Michael Bublé making Christmas money, avoid December. And December, for me as a publicist, starts November 15th. You'll notice a drastic shutdown. The only time I would ever recommend doing anything in December or November, well, at least to the end of November, is if you're releasing a Christmas song. So if you're not, and you're not Michael Bublé or Celine Dion, by December. So now you just, as long as you're avoiding March and December, pick a time that works. There is no gorgeous time anymore. There is no, this is my hot summer track. No, it's gonna work regardless, as long as you avoid those times. So now, pick your date and give yourself a lot of time. Let's start with radio really quick. Radio, once you get it into the system, and let's say it is getting feature spins, it's still gonna need some time to really hit, if it does hit. And it doesn't have to be gangbusters, but let's say you just get some really good medium to heavy rotation. That takes about 3 to 4 months to happen. So some people will release a song and go, all right, within a couple weeks, it should be great and awesome. And then I'll release another one and then another one and then another one. No, let radio sit with it. Even if your plan is to release 5 singles, which I don't recommend, but even if you were planning on doing that, give radio one. Have one radio single. Let it breathe, let it marinate, because it needs the time. Because there is a lot of competition, and then once airplay starts happening, it still takes a bit. It's a very organic feel to it to really get to higher spins. And if you give radio too much, so let's say you do drop a track, and then 5, 6 weeks later, give another one, then give another one, they'll just, for lack of a better term, get confused and be like, whatever, on to the next one. They need one solid track that they can really put all their energy into. So keep that in mind when you're planning. So for some artists, they want to have a single spinning, or at least, even if it's like 2 or 3 times a week, by the time an album or an EP is out. If that's the goal, then walk backwards. I would say at least 5 months. Give yourself the time. When it comes to online, like I said earlier, things that would usually take a day or 2 to turn over are taking 3 to 4 months. I know that in February, the big blogs were booking for August and September for their feature interviews. And they're still trying to break new people. They still want to be like the cool kid on the block that's like, I discovered this band 2 days ago. But they need 7 months' time if you want to talk with them. If you just want them to cover the single or add something in short and sweet about your music, 3 months. But if you want to talk to them or have potentially the opportunity to talk to them, give them 7. When it comes to newspapers, the daily papers, even though it's daily, keep in mind that the entertainment section might just run on Thursdays or Saturdays. Keep in mind that there's people big coming to town or new albums are dropping from like Beyonce. So instead of, 2 to 3 weeks notice, give newspapers 2 to 3 months in advance, okay? Like, I'm in Vancouver today. Vancouver Sun is super supportive of emerging artists. The writer Stuart Durden needs, I would say, 2 to 3 to 4 sometimes months to plan. And I know it's painful and you've been sitting with this awesome music for so long, but it's all about waiting and you've got to wait if you want it. If you want those pieces, time is key. So when you're looking over the year, you need to realize of what's going to eat up time, like March and December. And then you also need to kind of see what you want. If you want the more in-depth pieces on your work, you're going to have to give yourself a lot of time. And as I always say, it's new to everybody else. You might have been sitting on it already for 2 years. It is new to everyone else, and it's going to give you and your music the best shot if you give it the time it needs. Put all that love and time and energy into making sure it gets distributed properly so that people do have the time. So everything is done for you, and all it is just making sure that everybody has it and following up. And as I said, it's not a stalking game, especially when you've given yourself that amount of time. You can do it every week, every other week, just kind of nudging and being like, you have the tools. You have all my music. You have the waves, the MP3s. You have the album art. You have this, this, this. You have my story. Just a reminder, it's coming out October 20th. So that when people are making their plans, because they're so inundated, regardless of medium, they can go, oh, okay, I'm planning, it's May, but I'm planning for my October coverage, and I know this is done. And so I'm banking that, and I'll talk to you now. And that's a term that we use, banking it. So you might even do an interview with, let's say, Exclaim, and they're going to hold on to it, so nothing's going to be leaked. They'll most, if not like 99% of people, will stick to the embargo, and they'll talk to you in May, and they'll run a nice review and interview in October. A lot of times people just don't like that feeling, and I get it, of waiting and being like, why is this so long? But I think that's when you really have to take into consideration how the media currently is. There's less of it, and there's more competition out there. So you have one guy getting 13,000 emails a week, and most of it is panic, right? Fire, 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 have something out right away. If you give them that time, they can schedule it, it's not panicked, and everything just goes smoothly. So by the time your music hits, you're already starting to get some buzz, but everything just rolls out. And since you've banked everything, it's not like release week, you're going crazy. Everything is running, everything looks smooth. That's the goal. Now that you know that you should respect the journalist timelines, let's see what the journalists are going to want. And they're going to want all your assets. And they're not crazy. I've touched on it before, but about having your waves and MP3s, all your metadata available for them. Photos. Have some good photos. And when it comes to promo shots, make sure you have 3 or 4 handy. Think of the one you like best, the one that you're going to see the most out there when things start running, and have that as your primary photo. But then have some backups. Have a horizontal shot, a vertical shot, black and white, a color, and then always hold one back, just in case. And the just in case is great because it could be, this is going to be a massive feature in such and such magazine, or, you're going to be on the cover of the entertainment section of the daily paper. They'll want something that's not been seen a lot or even before. So you look at Exclaim, for example, and Range. They want new photos. And if for some reason they can't get a photographer to you and they can't do a photo shoot, the fact that you can provide them with something that no one's seen yet is key. So make sure you have those. Make sure you have all your lyrics, all of them, in a nice Word doc or what have you. Have all of your lyrics, have all your liner notes, have your album art, have a track by track. So that basically is, it could be a sentence to a paragraph on every single song that you're releasing. Let's say it is a full EP or an album, or if it's just a single, just have some wording about it. And it could be anything, how the creative process in terms of that song, or what inspired that song, just something. Because you'll find some outlets will make it look like they've talked to you when they haven't, because they're just pulling quotes from your track by track to be like, oh, I look like I did. Yeah. So it has that feel of an interview. If you can compile all of that and put it in a Google Drive or a Dropbox, with the media, I always say one-click solution. They just want to click and that's it. So you don't want them to go through stuff. So I always say when you're sending things to the media, have your asset folder so they can just click on, as I said, Google Drive, Dropbox, and then also have a private streaming link to your music. So they don't have to dig through your asset list to access your waves and MP3s. They can do that later. They want to listen to it, just let them click on something fast. It could even be an unlisted YouTube video of just, a static image with your songs. They need something that they're not going to have to fish through because time is of the essence. So once you have all of those and you feel comfortable and confident with that, that is your package to send to people. So after you've compiled all your assets and everything is good with the media that way, I highly recommend engaging with your super fans. So you could be an emerging artist. You're still going to have those fans that love you to death. Or you could be a massive artist, and we know that y'all have a lot of super fans. And that is just making sure that you kind of give them the tip off. A lot of people like premieres. Premieres do nothing anymore, just with blogs or even radio stations. Give your super fans the premiere. Drop it first for them. Make them feel special. Continue that relationship that way. Give them personal stuff too. When you look at engagement, especially with the superfan, they tend to like stuff more like, oh, this is me on vacation. This is me with my partner. This is me doing things, because it feels like they're getting to know you as a person. And it's not just the static, like my music, because they'll always support your music. So make them feel special by, hey, this is the first taste of my music video for you guys specifically, for my fans. Even if it's 5 of them, you're making them feel special. You are anchoring them to you for life. And people like that, knowing that they get the first look. That's key. So show you as a person, remove the music side a bit sometimes with that, and then definitely let them have the first taste. And sometimes I say too, if there is a premiere opportunity with something really big, let's say you can't turn it down, it's with a stereo gum, shoot behind the scenes footage and give that as a special treat to your super fans, that they get to see something first or something special that the rest of the media will see eventually, but you want them to know that, hey, you guys support me and my music and my mission, you get to see it first. Let them have that sometimes. It's really, really important. You want to keep those fans for life, because in today's age, things are turning over so fast that you want to make sure that the people that have the attention span to be with you for your career are going to be there for the career. And you don't want to avoid that or feel like it's not this cool blog. Like, no, they're important, and they're going to keep you going. So the takeaway in all this, I want you to really focus on 5 key things. 1 is learning about the media and learning about them properly. So making sure you have the right contacts for the right things. 2, giving yourself the time to make sure that it's disseminated properly amongst the media. So respect your timelines and respect their timelines so that really can get out there. 3, I want you to do follow-ups with media. It doesn't hurt. Don't feel like you're going crazy. It's only once a week, but it's gonna get your foot in the door. It's gonna get some name recognition, which is key. 4, I want you to also discover what you love outside of music so that you can start tapping into those podcasts or, even other media that focuses on stuff that might not necessarily be entertainment, but it's going to expand your fan base and it's going to help you as you go on in your media journey to do bigger and better interviews. And I think lastly, just have fun and remember that the music is yours and you've sat with it for a while, but it's going to be new to everybody else. So be excited about telling people your story and sharing your music because people will feel that. And it sounds corny, but they'll feel your passion. So have fun, figure out who to talk to, and then just go in there, guns a-blazing. Thank you so much. I'm Mavis Harris. Thank you for joining me on this Music BC Jumpstart Foundation Masterclass.